Happy Halloween, everyone. Welcome to Creativity-Hive's weekly show. It just happens to be the end of October when we're filming this, so had to have a little bit of Halloween fun. And before we get started, want to say thank you to this week's sponsor. Today's Creativity Hive episode is brought to you by iNet Media. iNet Media brings visual creativity to your video projects to tell your story and get noticed. inet-media.co.za. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. iNet Media himself.
Hello, everybody.
Mo,
Happy Halloween.
who was responsible actually for that, for the opener for the show too, which it's just so much fun. And you do so many amazing creative things with motion media. And I love it.
And there's a lot more to come soon, which
Awesome.
is why we are here today.
I'm going to bring Neil on here too. And you guys have, you're the Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects guys, and there's new stuff to talk about. So let's hear about it.
Well, I think we'll start with, like we discussed, with the big, really huge news for After Effects, which is actually kind of a game changer in the visual effects industry. The After Effects team has been pretty much hard at work for quite a while now in order to allow After Effects to work with proper 3D objects. It's never been seen before on After Effects. There was or is a plugin there's just one plugin really that actually a lot of people have used, which was from Video Copilot, which is called Element 3D. A really, really awesome plugin. Lots of packs of goodies that you could get, aeroplane packs and jets and cars and just a whole lot of stuff. And you could do a lot of stuff with it. But the problem was the fact that it wasn't built into After Effects. Even though it's blisteringly fast, it never fails. It does not crash. Uh, a lot of users were asking for native support within After Effects without a plugin, because naturally you'd have to buy the plugin, which is not a cheap plugin. Then you'd have to buy the packs. Then then they released a version where you could import 3D models. Now, for those who don't understand 3D or are beginning their journey into the 3D world, there's different formats of 3D files that you get. You get OBJs, which are object files. You get 3D Max files. There's a few. A few are industry standard. So how it works in the 3D world is that you take, in your mind, let's assume you're doing something for Coca-Cola, and you want to model out a bottle, right? So a can of Coke. It doesn't magically appear. It actually is built. So you sculpt it. You take little things that are called primitives, and you mold it like it's clay, and you shape it, and and it looks like this little white can. It's just white.
Mm-hmm.
There's no red, and there's no Coca-Cola sign or anything. What you see in the final is actually a texture, which is brought in separately. It's like a Photoshop file that gets wrapped around that object. So the 3D model is made up of two pieces: the model and the texture. This is very important for most people that don't understand this to know this. What happens in the Element 3D plugin is that you're allowed to texture inside Element 3D. However, always the big drawback was the fact that you could never ever model inside Element 3D. It was not made as a modeling program. So you'd have to get an object like a can and bring it in. Cinema 4D is a proper modeling and texturing piece of software, which is industry standard. And in there, you can do a Formula One car, you can do a jet, you can do pretty much anything you want. You can do the creatures from Lord of the Rings, and then they get animated. Now, After Effects got into a partnership of sorts with Maxon, who develops Cinema 4D. So you can import into After Effects using the Cinema 4D engine, using something called Cineware, which is built into After Effects. And that was the only way that you had kind of native support. But then you'd also have to have Cinema 4D or Cinema 4D Lite installed on your machine. So the guys were calling for, we would like to have native support. So I'm just gonna share my screen real quick, and what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
Am I sharing my screen? Yes, I am. Okay.
There it is.
So I'm just gonna go to this After Effects, and I'm going to just create a really quick new solid. So it's nothing here inside the solid, and then I'm gonna show you essentially what initially was I was talking about, which is Element 3D. So if I put in, sorry, I need to put in a new solid. Okay, if I put in the Element plugin, it's just going to load up for a second. Okay, so if I go to this little button called Scene Setup, right? Here's my 3D world. As you can see, I can rotate around it in 3D. And let me choose just anything. Here's one of the packs, and this is a jet fighter, right? As you can see, if I click OK, it's going to apply it right here. It'll populate in a second. It has populated, but you just can't see it right now. It's really small. So that's where there it is, right? So what I'm going to do is on the left hand side of my screen is the effects controls, and I can actually go into the the world transform layer, and I can actually just make it really big if I want to make it big, if I can make it smaller, whatever I really want to do. So I can replicate it. It's very intensive. It's not a steep learning curve, but it's actually pretty cool. It's pretty easy to understand how to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up here. I'm just going to if I scale this up, you'll see that it starts to blur. So what I need to do is I need to go into the world transform, and I'm going to choose the world scale value and just kind of scale this jet up, as you can see. And here's the jet, and I'm just going to kind of bring it down a little bit. And remember, this is just the plug in, right? It's not doing anything else. I'm going to now add a new, I don't have to add a camera. I'm just going to kind of, actually, just add this camera. All right, so I'm going to show you as I go around this. You can see it's a full three-dimensional object. All right, as you can see, fully 3D. Now, what's quite important to note in this sort of plugin is the fact that if I go back into it and I go to the scene setup, right, here's my jet once again. There it is. So I can add something like maybe a plane. So here's the plane at the bottom. You can see it comes in as a layer, and I'm going to scale that up like this, and then I'm going to apply a texture to it, or just something. I'll just choose something random and see what I can find. Uh, yeah, maybe just something like this. All right, so we've got this kind of surface going on here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to choose the reflection. I'm going to just go to reflection, and I'm going to say mirror surface. And I'm going to go in here and I'm also going to choose reflection. And I'm just going to go mirror surface. And I'm going to click OK. Now, what happens is if you do this, as you can see, I've got a lot. It's looking really cool. It's just very basic right now, but you can do a lot with it as you go. So I can have this kind of jet fly over and stuff. But remember, this was not done natively. It was done with a third-party plugin. There was no possible way that After Effects could do this before the release of this version. So what I have here is a model. This is in a different piece of software completely. You could call it Cinema 4D. You could call this whatever you want. This is KeyShot. So this is a model. All right, it's a Formula One car. I could, go in and change the model colors. I can change the wheels. All of these pieces that you see on this edge here. If we kind of just click on one, you'll see it was made up of this kind of shape out of clay. Not really out of clay, but it's kind of sculpted. This is a model. right? And each one is a different, I can change as an example, just change the texture, tile colors as an example if I want to, or whatever it is. Now, what I want to do is bring this model into After Effects. Now, if there's several ways of bringing this into After Effects, so I'm going to export this as an OBJ file, which is pretty much the most common file you can find. So I'm just going to put this on the desktop and I'm going to call it OBJ, right? Now, what I want you to see is what happens when we do this. So I'm going to say save. Okay, that's save that. Let's go into After Effects. Once we're in After Effects, let's see, After Effects, where are you? Right. So I'm just going to go File. I'm going to import the file, and I'll just look for that OBJ. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to bring this in, and it's importing it in. Okay, and that's the OBJ. And I'm going to just make a new composition out of it. Okay, that should be fine. I'm just going to scale it down a tad bit, and I'm going to bring it down. And here is my car, right? But you will see that this is a non-texturized version. As you can see, there's no textures applied to it. And that's the problem with OBJs, unless this MTL, this is the MTL is material file, is sitting inside the same folder. It will not know there's materials attached to it. And you cannot attach the materials after you've brought it in. So they're still working on it. However, the workaround to this kind of thing is very simple. I'm going to export this as a different format called a GLB or GRLTF file. It's a different format, just a different format. I'm going to export it. I'm just going to call it GLB. Okay. It's going to ask me for the resolution. I can make it really high so I get it very crisp. I can get number of samples, and I'm going to make this, say, 200. It's quite high. Once it makes high. And I'm going to click export. All right, so that will do a really quick export for me. And the higher that number that I set, the longer the export takes because it's a bigger file. It's now it's baking everything in. So what it's doing, it's taking all the textures and it's kind of combining everything. So I'm just going to cancel that because it's going to take that bake will take quite a long time. So what I want to do is I want to export it once this bake stops. So the workaround to that OBJ issue that I find is this new version of After Effects allows you to actually bring in different files. I've exported it before we started, so let me just go in and import. So I'll import the file. So I've got it in a folder, and I'm just going to call it F1 car, and you'll see this is the GLP file that I want. Okay, and I'll just open it, and I'll just create a composition from it. And I'm just going to make it the comp size, click OK. And here is my file. Now, if I move it around, you can see the difference immediately. Look at the textures. Everything is there. Everything that we want is actually in this. And this is a first, if it hasn't been shown before by anyone. It's actually the first time that After Effects is actually natively supporting 3D inside its own environment. There is no third-party plugins. We've brought in a proper three-dimensional file into After Effects. So let's just kind of do something different. Let's just go in here and we'll just put in a quick background. So I'm just going to go in and bring in a alpha ramp. Okay. That one actually. Oh, sorry. Let me just get this one. Yeah. Just get the gradient ramp in. Okay. So we've got this gradient ramp. We'll take that away. All right. So you know, put this underneath. Now, what I want you guys to see, it's very important at this stage, and I'm sure that you know at some point it's going to be fixed, or more, you know, functionality is going to be developed for it. Is the fact that if I take any sort of effect, let's take a very simple Gaussian blur effect and put it onto this car, you will see that nothing can be put onto this layer. This layer, the 3D layer, accepts nothing at all. You cannot change a thing with this object at this point in time. There's nothing that can be done. You can add a light, as an example. If you want a light, you can add lights, as you can see. So we'll go back into that light. So lights do affect it, as you can see, like so. But if we wanted to add something like a reflection or shadow or a drop shadow or anything like that, as you can see, the light is not affecting anything else. So if I had to make my background layer into a 3D layer, you'll see that the camera's, you know, is affecting both of it. So if I look at that light, you cannot have shadows or anything applied to it. So it's very basic 3D at this point in time, but the functionality, you know, there's a lot more functionality being added soon. And to give you an idea of just, you know, kind of what you can do, um, if I go in and I just move this car about, say so, and I'm just gonna add a new camera in, just to give it a little animation, so we can just see how things move. And I'm just gonna kind of turn it around like so, and I'm not animating at this stage. I'm just positioning, and I'm just gonna kind of do that and do that. All right, and then we can animate the camera, right? So let's go in there. Let's just do that, and we'll come in about so many seconds, and we'll just kind of swirl this around a little bit. Okay, and if we look at this, here's your very first full animation of your own 3D object in space. So let's get that back a bit. Back. Alrighty, should be fine. Okay, so here's your first 3D object inside After Effects being animated. And a lot of people are very, very excited about this kind of thing. So there was something that I had done a while back. I just did this as a really quick kind of test when I heard about this, and it was this test flight that I actually did. And it's not the animation is nothing spectacular or anything like that, but it was just really what is kind of possible playing around with animation inside After Effects with 3D objects that I was interested in seeing. And of course, naturally, gremlins will hit you when you're live, so it's not importing.
So
Not
it's going to
opening.
take forever.
It's normally like 3 seconds. That should be fine now. Okay, cool. So let's let it populate the screen. And everything is in order. I think everything's fine. Yes. Okay. So okay, there we are. So here's here's a city, and here's an aeroplane coming through. Okay, here's a jet, and this is the 3D object that was brought in, and the city is also 3D. So it's rendering, so you'll see that it'll take a little bit of time. And the backwards forwards movement is actually not a fault, it's just while it's rendering. You can see these layers are actually pretty intensive on the render. And if we play back that little piece of animation, you'll see you've got this whole three-dimensional scene going on inside After Effects. And there's a few gremlins at the moment. It's still in public beta, so they still have to do a lot of work on it. But I must take my hat off to the engineering team because I never ever in my wildest dreams ever thought I would see 3D natively supported in After Effects. I've never ever thought I'd see it. So now that I'm seeing it, I mean, as you can see, the gremlins are there. The city's gone small. The camera's gone wonky. So I'm not sure what just happened there. But these things happen when
So, yeah, they've got some work to do, but
they've got
that's
some work
cool.
to do. So that is 3D in After Effects. Uh, Neil, do you know when it's going to be released for public consumption?
Of course, anyone can go to the in your Creative Cloud desktop app and download the public betas, and so you can get it through the public beta right now. How soon they're going to get it out? They have been pushing this real hard internally from comments that Christine Goldby and Victoria Nice have both said on it, and Tim Kurkowski. Uh, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is out sometime by Christmas or a little after in the regular shipping version, just because they're putting so much effort into it. And we've been able up to now to do a lot of things that mimic 3D, because in After Effects you've done a lot of stuff like Mo is really hot at, for making objects that where they seem to swivel around and you change the lights on them and the shape and everything like that, and it looks very three-dimensional. But it wasn't completely three-dimensional with all the textural things that you can do to it when you're doing that, and the lighting changes. And
Mhm.
that's why this is such a huge thing, because this gives you the control over the things that are the tiny little things to make all the difference. I remember back when they were coming out with uh, that one Pixar movie where they had um, all the animated characters that were uh, with fur and everything, and they were talking about how uh, trying to create fur.
Monsters Inc., right?
Monsters Inc.
Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to create the fur was actually the most difficult challenge of the whole thing, because it just didn't look right,
Mm.
because the edges of it didn't do what you expect fur to do. And so it was really a bugger for him to figure out how to make it look three-dimensional when it really wasn't. And
Right.
so with this kind of thing, you're gonna be able to do what has been a huge problem in most things fairly easily. And it's it 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 has a lot of our After Effects acquaintances just jumping up and down and screaming and yelling and everything, because even as a beginning thing, it's got huge promise. It's really amazing.
I think it's got a lot of potential, but they've got a huge way to go because if you look at the 3D world, there's so much that's going on that most people don't understand. There's physics that has to be applied. There's lighting. There's occlusion passes, etc., which normally Cinema 4D and that sort of software would take care of. So if a 3D object hits something, it's very different to having a two-dimensional object touch a surface, right? So there's physics involved. It has to squash and it has to bend and it has to mimic real life. So how where they're gonna go with this is quite interesting. Whether the After Effects engine is going to manage, I don't see After Effects becoming a modeling program because
Yeah.
it's just not made to be a modeling program, and I don't think it'll go that route. But how it's are they going to allow 3D objects to interact? Are they going to allow reflections and shadows and lighting passes and alpha channels and so forth without being too technical? Is a lot of work, um, and I'm not too sure if at Christmas launch, those things probably will not be out then. I think they probably have roughly about 6 months or to a year of work, unless they've got everything just shelved and they're going to roll it out in
We'll
stages.
have to see see who's right, who's
Yes,
closer.
yes, we shall see who's
So
right.
I just have to say that for people that are watching, if you want to learn more about how to do some of these cool things in After Effects and Premiere Pro, we got you covered. Neil and Mo are great teachers, and they can work with you one-on-one. But if you're going, oh heck no, I don't want to have to do it myself. I just want somebody else to do it. Mo is your person.
Hey, hi, Andrew. Andrew's with us, so all the way from Australia. So that's cool.
Awesome. So Neil, you were going to show us some stuff in Premiere Pro.
Yeah. There are some things in Premiere that have been necessary for some time, like improving the color management options that the users have had. But of course, actually implementing them has puzzled a lot of people because the programs are behaving a lot differently than people used to think about it. And so I'm just going to walk through real quick like a couple of the things here. So let me switch over to my LG screen here, and we have this image. This is actually the original for this is B-RAW, which is a form of RAW, and actually we could has quite a bit of dynamic range to it. This is actually from a clip that I've made from that. But when you're initially bringing media into Premiere, times it can look as people are putting it blown out or whatnot. Well, and if you've got anything that was shot by a lot of phones now, the iPhones are tending to default to shoot in HLG color space, which is a version of HDR, high dynamic range. And it's got a bigger color space than in the SDR, the standard dynamic range stuff we've got. And so it won't look correctly. But where you find all of this of the stuff for now is in several different places, and that's one of the really fun things of doing it. So here I am. This is the clip in the project panel. This is it, and it's been in the project panel. And if you're having problems with color management, the first place to check is for the clip color management, which again, you go to the clip in the project panel. I'm going to right click and then up here, modify interpret footage. And for some reason, that's popping out onto one of my other monitors. We'll bring it down in. And at the bottom of the interpret footage panel is this color management section down here. And for some things, some cameras, they include LUTs or lookup tables that you can do to apply into the camera. That's a much more technical discussion to get into as to where to put them on your computer so that you can populate this list. But if you're working with cameras where you're working with an input or a show LUT, you might want to learn how to use that. The main options that most people will be working with now are the use media color space from file, which in this case, it's looking at it and it's saying, well, this is a Rec 709 image because this is an image I created from it. But a lot of times this will show up as image from file, and that'll say this is Rec 2100/HLG. And if you're wanting to work with it and for normal video, you really want to get out of the HDR space at this time. And so at that point, you would uncheck that and use instead your color space override. And so if this is showing HLG, you would set this line here, the color space override value, to Rec 709, because that way you can use it on a standard dynamic range or standard video format. Now, another thing is if you have log media, for a while, the only color log things that they had was the Sony S-Log 3. And now they've given us a number of other things. Ignore all the ones that say scene, unless you know exactly what scene referred is, ignore those. But you have the choices of Rec 709, 2020, 2100 PQ, 2020 avoid. So if you are working in on an HLG sequence, because right now within Premiere Pro, the only two that you should work with are SDR, which is Rec 709, and Rec 2100 HLG. And so you would set it for either Rec 709 for most things Or if you want to work in HDR, go with the Rec 2100 HLG right here. But those are where you set your clip color management. Now, once you've got it, uh, your clip color management set, you have to make sure your sequence settings are the same. And to do that, you notice I just clicked in the sequence panel here, the timeline panel, and it has the blue line around it here. Because if you don't have this active with the blue line around it, you can't go to the sequence settings. And that's where you set the working color space for your sequence, your timeline. And this one is Rec 709. And as I said, you can have 2100 HLG or 2100 PQ. You really have to know what you're doing to work in PQ at this point. HLG, yeah, you can mostly work in it if you have a little bit of experience. For most things and most people, I still at this point stay in Rec 709. But at any rate, those are the two places where you have where it matters where you get things. And the last one is over in the export thing. And we'll go, I have eliminated most of the presets that came with it. So we'll bring up some of the system presets here. And you notice most of these, if you look at the name, you don't see HLG or PQ. But if we go through some of these, you will see like down here, we have this one that is with HLG on it, and this one is PQ. If you are working form in HLG or PQ, you must use a preset to start with that has HLG or PQ, whichever it is you're using, in the name of the preset, because there's a lot of settings there. Yeah, you can set them manually, but most of us are not going to be able to figure out how to get all of them right so the file will actually work and be seen by the TV or YouTube or whatever. So if when you export, you either need to use just one with for an SDR or Rec 709 export, make sure there is no HLG or PQ here to the right of the name. And if you're an HLG, make sure there's an HLG sitting there. So that is, gets you up on the some of the color management changes. And I did want to point out though that there's some other new things we have. You come over here to the text panel, and I'm in the Essentials work space right now, and you have the text panel. This is also available if you're in the graphics workspace. But you notice you got transcript, captions, graphics for the options here. You have this option here to transcribe sequence. Oh my gosh. If you transcribe sequences, then it comes up with something that looks like this, where you've got the transcriptions here, and I'll expand this sequence out a bit. You can actually see the the text right here for what he is saying right down here. And like James Bond running on the catwalk with the bullets flying,
catwalk, bullets flying and striking all the metal around him, but never him himself.
but notice we have the time codes here. You can actually print this out, circle the areas in the time code that you want to have, come back, and then just go through here and just go down here. Okay, so 49. I want that, and you can click on it over here, and it takes you right to that point. Now I could do an edit on a couple points here and drop that onto a new sequence and just grab that part just as quick as I want to. You can edit from the transcriptions now. Even it is really amazing. It's I really recommend people start playing with this and really learning how to use it, because it is so useful. And the last
I love
thing,
it.
oh,
I love it. That's something that I probably actually should be using.
oh, if you're putting anything on YouTube, if you have captions, you can export this as captions, and you put this out on YouTube, and you get boosted on YouTube for having captions without having to go to captions. You can edit these. You can just click in here and that's the way I've done. And now I can type. You can split them apart. You can rearrange the way they're done. It gives you really quite a lot of control. So getting to work with the text and with transcriptions is something that I really recommend people start working with. And now my last thing is uh, going to be on. We'll go back to this sequence, and that is uh, wanting to run some music and using a tool called Remix, which is just really awesome. Now, as you can see here, uh, this this is the usable part of my sequence right here, and I added this music file to it. And you notice it. Wow, it runs way past that, and it's not going to cut off nicely where I want to use it. So, come back in here uh, and go. So if we want to use this music file with this area of the sequence, the in to out area of the sequence, it's just really slick. I just click on that on the music itself, and then you can right click and remix, or you can come up here to clip uh, and remix. And uh, I've already let's see, I'll go ahead and disable that because I've already been playing with it. So let's disable it. So now it's like starting over again, either clip remix, enable remix, or right click on the clip itself and enable remix. This kicks you over into the essential sound panel. You notice the way this changed all the way, all of a sudden? And it is area right here. It says target duration and remix duration. Well, because I've got other stuff on this sequence, it didn't automatically figure out exactly what I need. If I only had all my media for video media was right here on the sequence, it would automatically pop up with a target duration of that. So it doesn't know what to do it. Well, that's okay because I can look down and see I've got 20 seconds, about 23 seconds here. So let's just go up in here and type 2300 and hit enter. And that's 23 seconds that I want to have it. Notice that um, you can enter time code real easy here, 2300, and it automatically knew that I wanted 23 seconds. If I'd put 230000, it would have given me 23 minutes rather than 23 seconds. So that's one of those little things you can find to do. But now that it has uh, done that, and you have the customize things where you can tell it if you want to change the length of the sequence or whatnot. And so it's just plus or minus. That's looking a little long there. Let's take this down to 21. And notice it is just, my music is all of a sudden cut, so it's ending just past and it's plus or minus 5 seconds because it wants to find a place it can cut it. So now it's ending just past the sequence. Well, let's play this um, sequence and see what it sounds like now with it having done that interesting mix. And notice it seemed logically to fit in there. It chopped up the music quite nicely, and I didn't have to do anything. And the last little thing I'll show you here is um, ducking, which Miriam has found, and it's just like, whoa, this is so cool. And if I didn't have that set, when we get into this little bit here, it can stay pretty loud. Now, if I put a duck against, and this clip has a clip type of ambience right up here, it's shown. Okay. So I can come down here to my music and I can click duck against and ambience clips. And then I click generate keyframes. And now it will go through and figure out where this clip starts, and it will make changes in the volume on this clip so it fits underneath the audio from the one right up above it. So now let's hear what it sounds like prior to that and when it goes into that clip. Notice how it backed off the sound of that. Now, we could do the duck amount. It's minus 18 dB. I could come up here and do the duck amount to less. Let's go to only about 7 dB. And now let's go back here. Well, at any rate, it's you can set it for different amounts and how fast it goes down. But the remix and ducking are two things that are now real easy to do within Premiere Pro, and it's something that most people ought to be using on almost every project they've got, because you use any music, anything like that. This just makes it so much handier. So
Very cool.
Cool. Super cool.
That is great. Well, I think that just probably wraps it up for today, huh? Do you have any parting shots?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into. We have a Roland Collenberg that has sent us some, told us about some new. Scott and Mo and I are both kind of eager to get into
Yeah,
those.
we're going to have Roland on again. So
I just have I have a question.
okay.
The remix tool.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you use it in two ways that I don't use it in, right? Two totally different ways that I don't use it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
There is another way that you can use it. That's I'm sure you know, right?
Right.
That's for me, and I think a lot of people. It's really quick. It's actually a tool built into the toolbar. Most people don't know where it is. So I don't have Premiere open. Do you want to open yours up again?
Sure.
So yeah. So if yeah, well, yeah, if you want to undo that entire remix, and get your track back to the original length, right?
Was it wrong? Didn't have the right program where I was undoing.
Okay, cool. So that's the length, and you actually want to make it as long as where your selection on the timeline is, right?
Right.
The other way to do it is actually super intuitive. And you can see it analyze and do a whole lot of cool stuff.
Mhm.
And that is by using the remix tool itself. So if you go to your toolbar, Neil, and underneath underneath the third icon, which is the slip and slide. Yeah, hold it down, hold your mouse down. See at the bottom, remix tool.
Right.
Click it.
Mhm.
Yeah, click it. Right. Select that. Now go to the end of your music track, or just zoom out a little bit. Yeah, and click and pull back to where you want it to end, and watch it analyze. Bang, 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 and it's probably done. And you can play it back, and that's it.
And with it out there like that, if you want to pull it back a little bit more.
Yeah, you can pull it back even more, right, to where
Yeah,
it stops.
back,
Yeah,
and it's
and
not
it
going to
does.
go in there. I can try pulling it back a little farther, and it's
What?
doing it this way. It's not wanting to cut it off as quick there.
Huh.
Could you undo it again and then bring it back the first time right to where your timeline end point is? Because I also noticed that the second time it gives you a bit of a sticky feel. Yeah, so if we can grab it right to that end selection right at the beginning, it should possibly work.
No, it's still wanting to do it that way.
Okay, so it's then
Yeah.
it's the music track that's there. Okay, so and then it'll give you the same I think the same ending as you had as when you did it
Mhm.
on the essential sound
Right.
panel.
Yeah.
Maybe we can just hear that if possible.
Sure.
So that's another way to do it
Mhm.
for people that don't know where that tool actually is. So it's
Yeah.
just without getting into the essential graphics panel, it's
Mm-hmm.
essential sound panel. I use this all the time. And what's cool about that, Neil? Would you be able to make the music track, heighten it, and so we can see a little bit more on
Sure.
the music track? So there's a little thing that the viewers need to see that's so cool. That
Right.
shows you exactly what this tool does. See those little squigglies?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the
That's where it's
artificial sensei is actually making cuts and joining and rejoining. It's like a little stitch
yeah,
effect.
and it automatically does some crossfades between it and everything like that.
Yes,
It's really
absolutely.
slick.
It's so that's it actually physically tells you, literally physically tells you on screen, hey, this is where I actually did something to the track.
Yeah.
And then if you want to cut it up, you can actually cut it up from there and play around with it. It's a seriously amazing tool. It's the best tool I've ever seen in Premiere so far.
Yeah.
Awesome. We love it. So,
Yeah.
time to say goodbye, everybody.
Yes, we have some interesting guests soon, Miriam.
Yes, we have
Two
some
people there
good guests
having
coming
some.
up.
Yeah.
So, we'll keep everybody posted.
And for anybody
Yes.
looking at this, our last one with Ty was a really good one.
Yes.
An amazing guy to talk with. So check our channels and look for our programs.
And do some cool stuff with 3D in After Effects. Let's see what people do.
Okay.
See
Bye.
you all. Happy Halloween.
Bye bye.
Woo.